You might have read at MRCTV that the Candyman, a.k.a. the so-called Republican governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, has introduced a series of Wonka-like golden tickets to the population of the state to entice them to get jabbed. Well, when that's viewed in conjunction with California Governor Gavin Newsom's claim of a $75 million budget surplus out of the sky, they both help reveal one of the key problems of the U.S. political economic system since 1913. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC TV. Here's a lesson we can hold on to. As Calvin Freiberger reports for LifeSite News, Ohio's Mike DeWine announced on Wednesday last week a weekly lottery that's almost as darkly comic as the wildest fantasy of Roald Dahl, author of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and many other great books. Ohio Republican Governor Mike DeWine unveiled Wednesday an unusual incentive to encourage more residents to take one of the experimental COVID-19 vaccines, entering recipients in weekly drawings for
$1 million.
Dr. Evil. DeWine's solution is to enter adults who have at least obtained the first injection of a coronavirus vaccine into a lottery for one of 5 drawings of $1 million apiece, announced every Wednesday for 5 weeks, starting May 26th. And of course, for those who wish to be included in this wonderful lottery, they'll have to give up that medical information. Actually, the state already can get it because the 1996 HIPAA statute so many Americans think protects their medical privacy actually claimed for government the power to collect our medical data. Something about which I've tried to warn people since the bill was passed by bipartisan government hypocrites who couldn't care less about the Fourth Amendment in any way whatsoever. So that's $5 million to sucker people into taking one of many experimental jabs that have not been properly tested in order for them to receive anything other than an FDA emergency use permission slip. For those who care what that ridiculous and unconstitutional FDA actually says. About his plan, DeWine tweeted, quote, "I know that some may say, DeWine, you're crazy. This $1 million drawing idea of yours is a waste of money. But truly, the real waste at this point in the pandemic, when the vaccine is readily available to anyone who wants it, is a life lost to COVID-19. That's a Republican, and it's not his money. And that's not the end of it, because DeWine, this hero who in December last year ordained that kids could wrestle in high school but not shake hands before or afterward, also has proposed a college tuition lottery for kids to get jabbed. Those would be kids who are near zero chance of getting ill with and, as a result, spreading COVID-19. Writes Kari Steig for CNBC, which, by the way, categorized this story under the new agey style title of health and wellness rather than graft and corruption. Quote, for teens ages 12 to 17, DeWine said the state has a separate lottery planned. The state will randomly award a full 4-year scholarship to attend state universities in Ohio each Wednesday for 5 weeks, starting on May 26th, he said. This will include tuition, room and board, and books. And this brings the potential accumulation of DeWine's cash showers to $6 million. Just ask Steve Austin about that one.
What's the worth of a man? For Steve Austin, it's $6 million.
All in a state that barely balanced its budget last year, thanks to infusions of federal Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements, and had projected a deficit of $2.4 billion for 2021. As the Pretenders said in their song, My City Was Gone, way to go, Ohio. Meanwhile, a similar profligate spending phenomenon is appearing in California, where embattled Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom now is patting himself on the back for having a $75 billion surplus, despite having sunk the state to a $54 billion deficit last year, and despite the economy tanking because of his COVID lockdowns, resulting in minuscule tax receipts for the state. Aliet Shefri reports for Business Insider. On Monday, Newsom announced that California has a $75 billion budget surplus, which he plans to give back to the state's residents in the form of $600 checks for middle-income people and $500 checks for families with dependents. Part of what he calls the Golden State stimulus. Political gamesmanship, with money that came not from belt tightening, but from the federal government. Indeed, Newsom can use it to slick up his image almost as much as he slicks his hair. Along with direct aid to families, $27 billion of the surplus would go to K-12 schools and community colleges, while $11 billion would go toward debt payments. For instance, paying 100% of back rent for low-income renters, because nothing says respect the people more than subsidizing certain groups and claiming a form of political sainthood by helping, wink wink, people. Of course, none of this is helpful. It's all a sham of payoffs and pandering that opens a window onto a long-standing problem in the U.S. political economic system. Federalism is virtually non-existent in the U.S., and it has been for over a century, and it will not reappear to any notable extent until people recognize how the central government buys off state and local politicians with central bank-created cash. The problem goes all the way back to Alexander Hamilton's push to eliminate the Articles of Confederation and replace them with the Constitution. And it goes with his thirst for a central bank that could facilitate U.S. debt and federal government payoffs to special interests, especially, as we've seen, special interests on the state level who sit in political seats. Nullification of unconstitutional federal dictates is a principle that walked hand in hand with the passage of the Constitution. And for decades, the principle offered some resistance to Hamilton's collectivist push to have the feds engage in so-called internal improvements, which was the term for pork back then. In 1798, Thomas Jefferson outlined the principle of state nullification in his famous Kentucky Resolutions. But with the establishment of the Federal Reserve in 1913, the tendency of most politicians to pander to more and more constituencies, handing them money and expecting political support, creating new agencies and bureaus, ratcheting up the size of state programs that all siphon away real cash from taxpayers who could spend their money on what they believe is valuable. State politicians have been unable, even with that, to cover their expenses purely through taxation. So, like DeWine and like Newsom, they rely on the feds, who in turn rely on the Federal Reserve to pump out more fake cash, decreasing the buying power of each unit of money as the money supply increases in size. This is a major problem, not only because the central bank fiat currency monopoly creates the boom-bust cycle of inflation and price spikes and, of course, subsequent crashes, but because it makes it unlikely that state politicians will do what is constitutional, that they will forego Fed cash and instead will stand against federal authoritarianism. This time in U.S. history, we are seeing it at a key moment, and it shows us this massive historical problem. And it gives us the opportunity, I think, to tell others that federalism likely will not increase in any sizable way if state politicians do not turn away from the payoffs from the central government. Of course, it's likely that DeWine and Newsom won't hear a word of this because they seem to care more about their political expediency than their oaths to their state and the federal Constitution, and to leaving people alone to live their lives in freedom. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Remember that, and spread the word about these videos. If you're inside Facebook, remember the algorithms sometimes don't smile upon videos like this, so it might be up to you to share these with some friends. And find us on Rumble. Head over to MRCTV.org anytime because you'll find the whole team there, and you'll find us on Instagram, you'll find us on Parler, you'll find us on TikTok, and of course on Twitter. For MRCTV, I'm Gardner Boltzmann.